Welcome back, fantasy football fans. This is Fantasy Football on 5 coming at you once again. We are doing a live, obviously, podcast here, and we're also going to be talking about our rookie first round, specifically Dynasty, looking at the rookie drafts, and we're going to be jumping in, doing a little bit of a mock draft for you guys here live so you guys can see everything that's going on. And I'm going to throw it over to my co-host, Parker. How are things going on the East Coast, though, before we start this draft up?
They're going really well. I'm really excited for the NFL draft. It's just around the corner. I think it's actually kind of crept up on us, surprisingly. The month of April has gone pretty slow, but things are starting to pick up. The draft is a week from Thursday, and the best and the brightest stars of the NFL are going to be drafted to their potential forever teams. So today we're going to be going through a guy that could stay on your dynasty team for the rest of his career. And we're going to be going through the 12 picks and just the first round. We're going to be doing a lot of deep dives into these different players, see why they're good fits for your squad or for your team. And we'll get into it. I'll be the odds. Taylor, you'll be the evens. And we'll sort of go through and analyze pick by pick as to where the values are, why you should draft, and why you shouldn't draft a certain player.
Yeah, and to explain this a little bit, for those of you that are listening, obviously we have a live podcast that is going out on StreamYard right now. So if you're listening to it afterwards, you're like, what are you talking about? Well, that's why go check out the video on StreamYard.
It's also on YouTube and Twitter right now.
Yes. Other than that, though, we also have to explain, we had some difficulties setting this up. So we're going to actually use the PFN like mock draft for the NFL draft. And we're just going to use the first 12 picks in that as our rookie first round picks, just because we couldn't get it to work on the other fantasy football apps and stuff like that. So we're just going to go ahead and do it that way. Hopefully you guys can understand that. And we'll just go through starting off with obviously number 1 and going down to 12 being the Vikings pick. Well, it should be the last pick in the first round, quote unquote.
Yeah, we'll talk about this as if it was, the 101 or the 106. We're not going to be like, oh, the Jaguars on the clock and they're going to grab whoever the first pick in the rookie draft is. That's not going to be happening. So we'll get into it. For you podcast people, stay tuned. We're going to be getting into the visual side of things for just a second as we look at the PFN mock draft simulator. And this is going to be our tool that we're going to use. Taylor, can you see this?
Yes, I can see it.
Awesome. All right. So just offense will be drafted through these first 12 picks, obviously. So I have the 101. And unfortunately, I made a trade last year to send away my first round pick. And I finished last in our league this year in terms of the toilet bowl, how we ended up being a sleeper. So I essentially traded away the 101 without knowing. And it kind of bit me because I could use some help on my roster, but I'm fine with it. So if I was on the clock in the 101, I think there's really only one option here. Even if you're in a super flex league with 2 quarterbacks, I truly think the only option here is Breece Hall. And I love everything he brings to the table. He is a pretty stocky back, 5'11", 217. He was one of the more productive rushers at his time at Iowa State. He piled up over 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns in 2020 and has a little bit of pass catching ability. Nothing crazy like Najee Harris coming out of the league last year or coming out of Bama last year. But I really like the way Breece Hall ran in college. He's very comparable to those like Najee Harris. And I actually think he brings a little bit more to the table in terms of just his pure physical ability. I think he's well built. He's explosive. And his movement, I think, laterally and vertically works really well for whatever team needs him. And I don't know where running backs are going to start going in the real NFL draft. That's always a tough thing to sort of predict because we see running backs go as high as, 4 or 2 even. But Breece Hall's not going to be that guy in the NFL draft. But for fantasy purposes, he is the guy you want at the 101. He is who I will take.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an interesting take on Breece Hall because a lot of people, especially in 2 QB situations, they're going to go and look at quarterbacks because specifically there's one quarterback in this draft that I think a lot of people do like, and that is Malik Willis. And I could see him going at number 1 in a lot of drafts. And at number 2, at number 1, 2 here, as if I were to have this pick, and I almost did, not quite, because I also ended up trading away my first round pick, but my first round pick ended up being number 3 instead. So, but at number 2, obviously, assuming Breece Hall is off the board, I would probably go ahead and take Malik Willis. And the reason behind that being the fact that he has a running ability similar to Lamar Jackson. And I think that that sort of a Konami code quarterback in terms of fantasy purposes is going to come in really, really clutch, I think, for your fantasy squad. And even if he doesn't necessarily start right away, so let's say he goes, to a team like the Lions or something like that, and he already has a quarterback on the roster like a Jared Goff, so he doesn't have to start right away. I think long term, because this is obviously a long game with the Dynasty League, long term, Malik Willis is going to be someone who can help your squad out. And then on top of that, I just feel like there's no one else in this draft class outside of one guy who I might end up getting to later that even should be considered, I guess, in the first round in terms of like the first 5 picks or so. I just don't think that the quarterbacks are like, it's not like last year's draft class. There were a ton of different quarterbacks who you could see, making huge impacts on their squads for the upcoming season. That's not necessarily the case this year. Now, obviously, you might say, well, if that's not the case, why would you draft a quarterback in a lackluster QB draft so high? And it's simply because, the Konami code type of, QB, there's not a lot of them out there every single year. You might have a couple here or there, like last year there were a few that you could see some running ability from, but I just feel like Willis is most comparable to Lamar Jackson. And for those that like what Jackson brings to the table, you're going to get similar stuff from Malik Willis. Only it's kind of like a Lamar Jackson clone, but you can go ahead and plop him on whatever team that drafts him. So I feel like it's a good opportunity for you to get a guy who you may not necessarily see another one like him come out super soon, I guess.
Willis is also a really exciting prospect, if we're being totally honest. He didn't play at a big-time school. Liberty is not necessarily a household collegiate football name in terms of the program, but Willis put up good numbers at Liberty. And you can't deny the fact that if somebody's a good football player, they're a good football player. That's like how I think that's the Patriots motto, Let's go get Kyle Duggar from this random college. Let's go pick this guy up off the street. If they can play, they can play. And Malik Willis can play. So Taylor, I really like your pick there. I've seen people take Willis as high as 101, but I don't agree with that. I think Willis at 2 is his ceiling. That's the cap of his ceiling where he should be drafted in the first round. But I'm going to move on to the 103. And there are a couple of avenues you could go here. Now, I think this is a pretty deep class in terms of receivers. So there's a lot of potential. Let's say you don't grab a receiver with your first pick. You could turn around, get a good receiver in the second round or something like that. Because we've seen year after year deep receiver classes perform. But if I'm at the 103, truthfully, the position that I think needs the most help in terms of the NFL as a whole is probably the running back spot. Now, 2 running backs in the top 3 is maybe controversial to some, but I think Kenneth Walker is going to be a sneaky good pick for wherever you get him. And I want to take him here because I think he just has all of the tools of a 3-down back that you want in the NFL. The workhorse running back is dying. Taylor, we've been talking about that for a long time. You have guys like Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, and Derrick Henry. They may be the last of their breed, which is crazy because the NFL used to only be made of these big backs who could play pretty much 90% of the snaps in each game. Now, Kenneth Walker comes from the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is known for hard-nosed football. And what I really liked about Kenneth Walker is even though he lacked a little bit in height, he makes up for it in lower body strength. He reminds me a little bit of Maurice Jones-Drew, just a little bigger or a little taller, I should say. Not as heavy, but I think the combination of what he can do uh, between the tackles and in the second level is really going to help Kenneth Walker succeed in the NFL. So he's the guy I'm taking at the 103, my second running back off the board.
It's funny that you put him at number 3 because I made a trade this offseason. I would have had the third pick in our draft, but I went ahead and traded for J.K. Dobbins at the time, and got a few other things with that trade, and I traded down from spot number 3 and ended up later getting a trade to get spot 8 in the draft. And what's interesting about that is I essentially asked Parker, actually, I was like, in reality, I'm trading Kenneth Walker here for J.K. Dobbins. And
Yes.
is that a good move long term? And I thought about it, and I decided I'd pull the trigger just because I don't know. And part of me is regretting it a little bit, but because I am going to be 100% honest, I have held this in. I haven't even told you yet, Parker, but Kenneth Walker, I think, is my favorite player in this draft class.
Hmm.
Absolute favorite player. I think that he is going to be a monster in the NFL. And what I like about him is, you mentioned like comparisons earlier. Like Breece Hall for me personally, I think Breece Hall reminds me of almost like a Matt Forte. I feel
Okay.
like a little bit.
I like that
And
comp.
whereas Kenneth Walker, I don't know that there's a running back that immediately jumps out because he's got speed that I don't think anyone expected. You saw the 40 time. Everyone was stunned. He had under a 4.4 for his 40 time, and I feel like at the end of the day, we haven't seen a guy who has the lower body strength and the speed and the way that he's built. Now, I know a lot of people, the biggest knock on him is, well, he didn't catch a lot of passes in college, but the situation that he was in at Michigan State, they don't make their running backs catch the football. You're essentially taking it and knocking a guy for not being asked to do something,
The last
and
time Michigan State had a pass catching running back was Le'Veon Bell.
that what's funny about it is like everyone says that it's his fault he didn't catch passes, but during the combine and everything he showed that he can catch the football. So for me, I feel like Kenneth Walker is the running back. I feel like in this draft class, I know a lot of people love Breece Hall, but I like Kenneth Walker in terms of the value that I'm getting him at, and the fact that for me personally, I think that he might be the best, 5, 6 years down the line, he might be the best player in this draft class.
Very nice. All right, Taylor, you're up at the 104. Who do you have your eye on? So you're not concerned with landing spot at all. Okay. Yes, got Scary Terry, Curtis Samuel, just to name a few. But yeah, I think Wilson's a really good pick. He's personally not my favorite receiver in this draft class, but he's going to be good. There's no doubt about that. I would just rather have somebody else, and that's the guy I'm going to take with my pick here at the 105. Is going to be Jameson Williams, coming out of Bama. I know he tore his ACL in the most recent college football game. However, Alabama receivers are bred differently, and I don't think the injury is going to slow him down one bit. We see people come back from ACL injuries faster than anything now, you know? And Williams, to me, fits the mold of an NFL receiver. He's not the biggest guy, he's only 180 pounds, but he he uses his body to create space, especially in the deeper routes that he runs. Because I think that's what he is. He's just a deep threat. He's a fast guy, and I think he can create the space that he needs to get open in the NFL. So Williams, to me, is the best value in the middle part of your draft. Don't be scared with the injury. Let's say he misses the OTAs or whatever. He'll be ready for the preseason. And even if he's not 100% by then, you can count on him for the beginning of his rookie year. But remember, Dynasty's a long game. Don't be concerned with his injury right now. So Williams is my guy here at 105 coming out of Alabama. He got hurt in the NFC Championship game. He got hurt in the College Football Championship. And I truly think that if he didn't get hurt, we'd be talking about him as a top guy off the board. But that still doesn't make any sense to me. You know, what the media can do to a player and their stock just because, this guy got injured or this guy ran, a half a second slower in his pro day than he did his combine. Let's drop him down 3 spots. Don't listen to the NFL media when it comes to who you should pick in your rookie draft because they're all going to say the same thing. So, I'm not saying you should listen to me either, but I like Williams here. I think he's a really good value. And he's the guy that's going to stick on an offense because he has a unique skill set of the deep route and creating space. He's my guy. You'd be a very lucky man. The ACL injuries are no longer a career-ending injury. Like the Achilles. The need for speed. Yes. We saw how that worked for Ross's career too. Yes. Th- think of the injury as a value, you know? Right. Yeah. All right, you are on the clock at 106 now. Right. 6'5". All right, Taylor. I'm not a fan of London, if I'm being honest. If there's a bust candidate at receiver, it's to me he is one of the top guys. But you said, I think he's a hit or miss kind of guy. He has the size to perform really well. Especially for a wide receiver needy team like I don't know, the Jets or the football team or something like that. Could grab him in the middle of the draft, and all of a sudden you have a potential number one receiver on your hands. But the other part of me is like, I don't know if he can always win in coverage against the NFL corners, who are obviously otherworldly talented. So London to me is a guy I'm staying away from personally, but the more he falls, the more he gains value for your team. So don't be shy to pass him up if you find him sitting there at 6, 7 through 9. Honestly, don't pass him up just because he's not the pretty pick, if you will. So I'm going to move on to the 107, and I'm sticking at receiver here. And this guy, he has been the topic of a lot of fantasy talk recently. Where should this guy go? He could go as high as a 101. But recently, I think he's gotten a bad rap. And I'm going to go with Treylon Burks here, the receiver from Arkansas. He's a big guy as well, 6'3", 225, typical big body guy, right? I think what Burks is getting the rap for is that he's just I don't think he's quite ready, if that makes sense. I think other guys like Wilson and Jameson Williams are NFL ready day one. I think it's going to take Burks a little bit longer to get ready. Now he's got Taylor. I think he's going to like this. He's got big hands, so you know what big hands means. But yeah, exactly. Literally, he wears 5XL gloves on game day. But I really don't want to discredit Burks for the player that he is because he played in the SEC and set a lot of records. That's not an easy thing to do. Now, I think if you had taken Kenneth Walker a little higher, Taylor, or if you had taken him at the 2 spot, I think we be talking about Treylon Burks in different light right now. But he's fallen to the 7th spot. I don't think he's going to fall this far in real life in most rookie drafts. I think he's going to be a top 3 pick in most rookie drafts. But I just think buyer beware with Treylon Burks because now I don't think he's going to end up like John Ross, where he's the 9th overall pick in the draft and he doesn't do squat for his entire career. But I also don't think he's going to turn into a guy like Mike Evans who posts 1,000 yards every season. I don't think he's going to be the bang for your buck receiver that you get in the first 4 picks. So that's just where I'm standing on Burks. I think he's fallen down people's boards for reasons unknown to me right now. And like I said, maybe this just could be because Twitter is talking about him a certain way. Oh, I like this guy, so they're pushing Wilson's narrative over Burks or whatever. But Burks is still a talented player. I'm shying away from him. Take a look at it. Maybe you can do the same. 4.55 at the combine. But think of it like this, Devontae Adams, his 40 time was 4.56. DeAndre Hopkins was 4.57. Yep. I mean, Jerry Rice had big ass hands, but Jerry Rice also ran a 4.7. Brooks, his route running doesn't really stand out amongst these other guys either. And if you can't get open in the NFL, you're not getting the ball. Right. All right, Taylor, you're on the clock. Isn't that how it always works, though? And that's what he's known as, the other Ohio State receiver. I watched Olave play a lot, and yeah, his speed is evident on tape. But he knows how to get open too. He returned for his senior year. He could have been a first round draft pick last year. Returned, thankfully avoided injury for his case, and his route running is probably tops in this class. And NFL quarterbacks like a guy who can get open. Obviously, that sounds kind of stupid, but you know, how true can that be? You know, so Olave has good things going for him right now. I think landing spot's gonna be really key for him because if he ends up as the third receiver on a roster, I don't think he's going to be as efficient as you hoped him to be. But let's say he ends up as the number two guy on a team like the Saints or something like that, or maybe he goes to Philly or something. He's going to be productive for you based on landing spot. I think that's where I stand on Olave. Too, you brought up a lot of good points too. Uh, he's not the pretty pick, but maybe he's just the guy you need to take, if that makes sense. All right. Well, Taylor, I'm going to break the mold. We've picked five receivers in a row. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We could have swapped Wilson and Walker for some variety, but truthfully, these receivers are going to go anywhere in this range. So I'm actually going to break that, not just because I want to, but because I think it's the sensible and logical thing to do. I'm going to go with Isaiah Spiller here. I know you've been holding off on him because you're not a big fan. And truthfully, I like the other two running backs much more. But there was a reason Spiller was touted as a top pick in the rookie draft. All right. Coming out of the SEC, he's faced a lot of good competition. He's 6'1, 225. And I think that's really good size for the NFL. Now, he's not going to be a three down back by any means. The only guy who I think could do that is Kenneth Walker in this draft class. But you don't necessarily need to be three down back to have success in the league now. So, what I think Spiller has going for him is his physique is like these other backs, is really going to help him get through the first level of tacklers. You know, can he get to the outside? That might be an issue. But if teams can scheme him to run up the middle, I don't think that's a big problem at all. So the NFL moves a lot faster than college. And the only issue that I see with Spiller is outside runs. And if you can't run the ball, how are you going to run an offense? We see it time and time again. If teams can't run the ball, they're not going to win. You have to have the balance. I understand that it's a passing league now, but you have to be able to run the football. And for a running back needy team, let's like for me, I could use a guy like Isaiah Spiller on my dynasty roster. Just based on how my roster is set up, we have three flexes, we have two running backs. I could use a guy like Isaiah Spiller. However, probably not going to be able to get to him as I don't have a pick in the first round this year. I think Spiller's a good guy to take late from picks 9 to 12 in your draft. Just don't count on him to be the starter from day one wherever he lands. Hmm. Yep. Interesting. Malik Willis. The running back who throws it. Yep. Well, that's something. You know, I was expecting you to go with Matt Corral. I think he's the second best quarterback in this draft class, maybe even the best. Because, and just in terms of pure football, not counting the fantasy aspect of it, but I like it. You know, I like the surprise of Ritter. But I'm gonna go back to receiver here. This is my last pick, and if it was my dream to draft this guy, I will. And he had a nickname at Penn State, Jahans, because he caught everything. All right, I love Jahan Dotson. He he has ball skills similar to that of Allen Robinson, just not in terms of the size. Robinson's much bigger, but Dotson can get the ball wherever it's thrown. All right, that's what I really, really like about him. He also knows how to make guys miss in the open field. He doesn't have blazing speed like a Devonta Smith or something like that, but he's got speed to boot for yards after catch, route running, and separation. I think Dotson can do it all. And he's going to be a steal for wherever you grab him because he's not going to go in the top 20 picks of the NFL draft. He might not even go in the first round. But I think where he does go is to a team that needs a third receiver. And truthfully, I think his most ideal landing spot is the Packers, who are picking at 28. Now, that might be a little high, and there could be other receivers on the board at that time. However, Aaron Rodgers might find his new friend. He might forget all about Davante Adams real quick once he finds how well Jahan Dotson can catch the ball. He's 5'11, not quite 200 pounds. He gets the ball, and he has a nose for the end zone. He set the all-time Penn State record for touchdowns from one quarterback to one receiver. He and Sean Clifford did that. So he can score, he can get open, and most importantly, he's got sticky stuff built into his gloves without even needing to cheat. So I like Dotson a lot. Taylor, you've known that for a while. He may not go in your first round, but let me be the guy to tell you he should, unless you're in my draft. So you can wait for him to get to me. But I really like Dotson. I mean, we've had KJ Hamler and Deshaun Hamilton recently entered the league through Penn State's receiver system. Hamler he hurt last year. Deshaun Hamilton was a fourth or fifth round pick. I don't think he'll really pan out too much, truthfully. They're on the same team. They're on the Broncos. We know Allen Robinson is a really good receiver, but that he was drafted a long time ago. But I think Dodson could be the best of all of those guys if he has the right quarterback. Yeah. I mean, that's what I think about Ritter too. So tit for tat, right? Not a not a bad guy to be compared to. Yes. Yep. All right, well, Taylor, that does it. That's picks 1 through 12 of the rookie draft. That should be coming up shortly after the NFL draft, which kicks off April 28th. I almost said August 28th, but that'd be closer to the kickoff of the regular season, which honestly couldn't come sooner. But just to round up, we have Breece Hall at the 101, followed up by Malik Willis, Kenneth Walker, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, Drake London, Treylon Burks at the 1-7, Chris Olave, Isaiah Spiller, Desmond Ridder at the 110, Jahan Dotson, and Rashad White rounds out our first round. So this was a really exciting round one of our draft. Where do you see the most? What's the best pick to have in your opinion in this draft? If you had one pick in the first round, where would you want it to be? Picks 1 through 12.
Well, in terms of picks 1 through 12, if I could choose the spot, I feel like 3 is a good spot because I think you can get a really good player in Kenneth Walker there. But if I can't have 3, then outside of that, I would rather have pick like maybe 8 or so, just because I feel like that's a good in between. It's where, because I feel like there's a dead zone from picks like 5 to 7 where it's like, I don't really love any of these guys given this spot. Whereas 8, I feel like is a prime spot to get someone's going to follow you at pick number 8. The question is who, and so that's where you can pick up a good guy. 8 or 9, I'd say is where I'd prefer if I can't get pick 3.
Yeah, pick 3 seems to be a really good because you have options at pick 3. I think pick 1 is pretty set in stone with Breece Hall. Honestly, 2, you could change the whole course of the draft with pick 2. But I think 3 is a really good pick. But truthfully, I kind of like pick 5 as well. That's where I grab Jameson Williams. I think you have a few selections between receivers there that can really. I don't think you can do any wrong if you're looking at the receivers there. The only guy who I wouldn't take personally is Drake London, but that's just me. So I think 5 is a good pick to have. But truthfully, if you're finding yourself unsure of what to draft, who to draft, where you want to draft, trade out. Next year's draft class is expected to be a lot better than this one's. And if you can sweet talk one of your league mates into a trade, grab one of their seconds, grab a pick next year, or grab a player who's going to be as good or better as the rookie you're going to be drafting.
Yeah, I like that. I think that if, like you said, if you don't love a spot, don't draft a guy just to draft a guy. That's
Right.
not helping your team. So trade down, trade out, whatever it is. Find players that fit what you want.
All right, Taylor. We are going to wrap this podcast / live stream up. Any final words for listeners?
Just good luck for all you guys who are going to be doing rookie drafts here soon. I know some people do them before the NFL draft, so if that's the case, good luck to you. Hopefully you don't regret the landing spots for some of your players. But other than that, I would just say make sure to tune in. We're going to be doing our own mock drafts of the NFL draft here upcoming for this next probably week or so. We're going to do like a live draft, kind of like this one, where you're going to be able to see our picks, but we'll both do our own separate picks all the way down 1 through 32 of the first round. And then the week after that, obviously we're going to have the NFL draft. So make sure to tune in, and it's only like a week and a half away, I believe, at this point. So it's exciting stuff. And we do a live stream for the NFL draft, give our opinions, who we think is going to be picked every single spot. So go ahead, and if maybe you just can't find the draft, online or something, we'll be able to stream it for you and make sure that you get all the information you need to.
All right, Taylor, thank you for joining me once again. This was a Fantasy Football in 5 podcast. Thank you for listening. If you're on YouTube, thank you for joining us, or on Twitter, thank you as well. This is our 100th YouTube video, actually, so a milestone there for us as well. But we're going to be bringing you a bunch of content this off season and into the regular season that you have not seen before. So please make sure to stay tuned. Our website is www.fantasyfootballin5.com. We have our most recent article on there is actually talking about the wide receiver market and how Christian Kirk, of all people, has reset it. So we have plenty to look forward to, but we can't wait to see you next time for Fantasy Football in 5. We thank you for listening.